From NJ.com, this is Talk is Cheap, a New York Giants podcast. We're talking Big Blue football all year round.
Welcome on in, Giants fans, to episode 140 of the Talk is Cheap podcast right here on NJ.com. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend and colleague Ryan Dunleavy. And this is a night where the Giants season, for all intents and purposes, Ryan, fell off the rails. They come out and the Eagles intercept Eli Manning right off the bat. Second play from scrimmage on an ill-advised throw. 2 plays later, Carson Wentz finds Alshon Jeffrey wide open on a throw across his body for a touchdown, and the Eagles were off to the races, and the Giants really didn't have any answers. And all of the questions about Eli Manning from before the draft, all of the concerns coming into the season and after a subpar performance in the first 2 weeks, they're now all at the forefront of this Giants team after 6 weeks, and they're now 1-5.
Well, that's not true, Matt. They did have some answers. You said they had no answers. They said they're close. They said they're 3 or 4 plays away. Yeah, you're 3 or 4 plays away. If those 3 or 4 plays are touchdowns, like, you are not close. You lost by 21 points. Yes, this is the first time you've been blown out, but it's the same problems, man. It's the same problems week after week. I mean, Pat Shurmur mouthing, throw the ball to Eli Manning and getting caught doing it by the TV cameras is probably going to be the lasting image of this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and iTunes. We'd love if you leave us those 5-star reviews. Check us out on Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, all of your favorite podcast platforms. Ryan, I think that we really need to zero in on the issues with the offense and the quarterback moving forward from here, because what's done is done. And the NFL draft is over and done with, and I know that people are going to debate whether the Giants should have taken
There's another one coming. There's another draft coming, baby.
Of course there is. Saquon Barkley last night, 130 yards rushing. He had a 50-yard run and a touchdown, averaging 10 yards per carry. He had 9 catches on 12 targets for 99 yards, including a 55-yard gain on a 2-yard dump-off. The Giants' offense on Thursday night against the Eagles was Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley, Saquon Barkley. And that's it. So while we can,
he might be the best running back in the NFL, Matt. He might be better than Todd Gurley. He might be already. Yep, 7 games.
No, I agree, and I think that he's well on the way if he's not there at this point 6 games into his career. He's that good. He's that much of a weapon, and I think last night was really his coming out party. But the Giants are going to have to turn the page from Eli Manning, whether that's this week, as I suggested with Kyle Lauletta in Atlanta, whether it's after the bye week and you turn to Kyle Lauletta at that point in San Francisco, or you go all in on Justin Herbert out of Oregon, Will Greer out of West Virginia, or Jarrett Stidham out of Auburn. What's now evident is this is rock bottom for the quarterback position for the New York Giants and Eli Manning.
No, not rock bottom. I covered Rutgers. There's always rock bottom. There's always rock bottom, and then there's, more rock bottom, and then there's more rock bottom. This is a new rock bottom. This is a new low. But if don't count out the Giants just playing Eli Manning for 6 more weeks and, sticking with their guy and letting him ride it out. Just don't count it out. I mean, you say it, I say it. Former NFL quarterbacks, Hall of Famers, former Giants like Martellus Bennett say it. But unless John Mara, Pat Shurmur, and Dave Gettleman say it, nothing's really going to change. And look, one of the hardest things to do in all sports is say goodbye to an icon. And the Colts did it with Peyton Manning and got Andrew Luck. And the Packers did it with Brett Favre and got Aaron Rodgers. But you know what? More franchises screw it up. More franchises hold on to the guy for too long. More franchises botch the goodbye. And that's what the Giants are doing.
Well, that's where you have to rip off the Band-Aid. And the thing that I went back and I went through the numbers on Thursday night, Eli Manning on passes not intended for Saquon Barkley or Wayne Gallman, he averaged 5.29 yards per attempt.
Is that little Wayne Gallman or just Wayne Gallman? Little Wayne Gallman?
Lil Wayne was not in the building other than the pyrotechnics on a night where it was 100% humidity, and it looked like a Lil Wayne concert out on the field before the game began. But you look at that stat, and under 6 yards per attempt on a night where he attempted 43 passes, and you funneled the offense, and I think rightfully so, through Saquon Barkley with 25 touches, 12 of them targets, 9 of them were caught by Barkley. I don't think that they've done a good enough job of stretching the field, getting Odell Beckham Jr. involved, getting Sterling Shepard involved. And if you look at the ESPN article by our former colleague Jordan Ryan, you look at Eli Manning this year, he's actually holding onto the ball longer in 2018 and a quick release offense than he was in 2017 under Ben McAdoo. So whether you want to blame the offensive line that allowed Barkley to rush for 130, whether you want to blame the lack of receivers or Beckham Jr. not having his head in the game, the bottom line is Eli Manning is not making sound decisions. He's holding onto the ball too long. And quite frankly, he looks every minute of 37 years old and every bit having whiplash from playing behind this offensive line for the last 3 years. They are gaining nothing from keeping Manning on the field in the starting lineup right now. Nothing.
Let's be clear about something. When we blame Eli Manning, we aren't not blaming the offensive line. We aren't not blaming the coaching. We aren't not blaming the wide receivers. They all are to blame, including Manning. The time has come and gone for it to be like, oh, well, if you get Manning better receivers. Okay, well, they got Manning better receivers. They got him Odell Beckham. They got him Sterling Shepard. He's no longer playing with, the guys he was playing with in the late 2000s, last decade. If you get him a better line. Well, they tried to get him a better line. It doesn't look like they did a very good job of it.
Will Hernandez was a hit. I think that pick was the right
good.
pick. He's been very good.
He's been good. Has he been like Zach Martin, all-pro rookie? No, he's been good.
I think he's been emerging as one of the top 10 players at his position so far. And if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, he's been very good. But on the flip side of that spectrum, Ryan, Patrick Omameh has been terrible. And you look at Nate Solder, who they paid $36 million guaranteed to. He's allowed 5 sacks through 6 games. So they've made the effort. They just whiffed on 2 of their 3 additions.
Yeah. Look, so my point overall was everybody's to blame, including the quarterback. They've changed everything else. They've changed the coach. They changed the GM. They changed the offensive line. They changed the receivers. They've changed the tight ends. You're out of options. The one common denominator is it's time to change the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why if I were Pat Shurmur and if I were Dave Gettleman, I would have a meeting of the minds today. This afternoon, I would be meeting in Dave Gettleman's office, and I would be going over a plan to get Kyle Lauletta ready to take game snaps. Listen, if you want to do it against the Falcons, as I pointed out, here's the reason why you do it. You'd have 10 days. You'd have this whole weekend to have Lauletta and Shurmur have a meeting of the minds, go through the playbook, pick out the concepts and the routes that Lauletta is comfortable with, that he exceeded on at Richmond. You would start to sort of potentially ignite a locker room that's becoming more and more frustrated by the quarterback by the day. Perhaps you light a fire under Odell Beckham Jr., and you'd have 10 days worth of practice to get him ready. And listen, I know that he hasn't taken any first-team snaps since training camp. I know that he hasn't started a game since the Detroit Lions game in the preseason. But you look back at that game, and there's a game that really stuck out to me, Ryan. Do you remember everything collapsed around him deep down in the red zone, and Lauletta scrambled for like a 14-yard touchdown? That's the type of play that you can't get from Eli Manning at this stage of his career. Why not throw the kid out there, see what he can do, and evaluate whether you need to draft one of those quarterbacks, or you can get a generational pass rusher like Ed Oliver or Nick Bosa in the draft? Why not rip the Band-Aid off and put the kid in today?
Okay, couple of things you hit on. One, you said he started against the Lions. He actually started against the Patriots. The guy who started against the Lions was Davis Webb, who I would love to see play with the Giants offense at this point. That's beating a dead horse. I get it. Okay, I get it.
It is. He's on a practice squad, and 32 teams have passed up for 6 weeks.
I don't buy that. I'm tired of hearing that. I don't buy that because he was cut at a time where everybody had their 1 and 2 quarterbacks. I don't buy that he would be on a practice squad if he was cut in May or something like that.
Garoppolo got hurt. The Niners could have put in a claim if they thought he was a capable backup.
I'll give you that one. There you go.
Right.
Okay. So, but I'm not going to say 31 teams passed on. I'm just not. But okay, the 49ers one is a good case. All right. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Number 2, I loved your column this morning. I love when I read an opinionated piece that has a definitive plan laid out, and you laid out a definitive plan. You and I disagreed on it in the locker room, and you know what? you and I disagreeing was probably the most fire I saw in that locker room, which is a problem. Yeah. You and I arguing over when Kyle Lauletta should start at quarterback should not be the most fire in that locker room. Where is somebody to just say this is unacceptable? I want somebody to flip a table, but that might be the journalist in me. Where is somebody to just be like, this is unacceptable? The buck stops here. We're going to reevaluate everything we're doing for the next 10 days, and we're going to come back as a different team.
They don't have that guy.
Yeah, they don't.
They don't have. They just flat out don't have that guy on this team.
So my Lauletta plan, just since we're talking about it, would be this. I would bump him up to the number 2 quarterback. Look, I talked to Kyle Lauletta last week. It was very honest. He doesn't even get a snap in practice right now. Not even one. He is literally taking mental.
He's the scout team guy. Yep.
Yes, he's correct. He gets snaps as a scout team guy, and he throws during individual periods. But when they get into the game planning and the 11-on-11s, he does not take a single snap.
Which is not abnormal, by the way. That's how NFL teams handle it. Just for the record. Yeah, for people listening. That's the plan. The starter gets 98 out of 100 snaps, and you might throw your backup in for 2 or 3 snaps of practice. But continue. Yeah.
So what I would do is I would move Kyle Lauletta up to the number 2 quarterback ahead of Alex Tanney, who, look, Alex Tanney's a nice guy, but he has no future with the Giants. So I would move him up to number 2 on the quarterback depth chart this week, get him those, whatever you say it is, 2%, 5 total, whatever it is that goes to the backup quarterback during a practice. Start him with that. And then maybe after the bye week, when you're sitting there 1-7, maybe then you can go to Kyle Lauletta as a starter. To go this week from 0 to 60, to use a car analogy, seems like too much for me. I understand the idea of starting him on the road away from the frenzy at MetLife Stadium. But after the bye week, you're at San Francisco. You couldn't be farther from the frenzy. So that, to me, is the right time. Slowly integrate him. It's what the Giants planned to do when they started Geno Smith instead of Eli Manning.
Which I thought was a terrible plan, by the way.
It was a terrible plan, but the reason it was a terrible plan was because they wanted to start Eli Manning ceremonially and then play the other guys just so he could continue.
It's silly.
That was the reason it was a terrible plan. I didn't hate the idea. Look, in the moment when I wasn't covering the Giants, I was like, what are they doing? Geno Smith? Why would you start this guy? But as I've covered the team for the last year and become, somewhat privy to some inside information, is I like the idea that they weren't just going to rush Davis Webb from 0 snaps in practice to starting NFL quarterback. I like the idea Geno Smith was going to start a game or two while Webb was his backup and figure it out from there, and ultimately hand the keys to Webb in week 14 or so. If that's what the Giants want to do with Lauletta, I can live with that.
Yeah, I'm going to – again, you make very valid points, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with waiting until after the bye week and getting him 2 weeks' worth of practice snaps, and that's fine. I think practice snaps might be just a tad overrated here because he's in meetings, he's in film study, he's been around these quarterbacks, he's been around this coaching staff since he was drafted. He did practice in April. He didn't forget how to throw the football. And again, you walk through that locker room and you talk about how listless it is, how lifeless it is, how we saw on the sideline with Odell Beckham Jr. Headbutting that cooling fan. We saw a little bit of conflict.
He is not lifeless. We can say that about Odell Beckham.
True, but his frustrations are boiling over, and I don't think that an angry and frustrated Odell Beckham Jr. is good for this locker room. Would you agree with that? So, and I think that the longer this goes on with Eli Manning, the more checkdowns that you get, the fewer 25-yard shots down the field, the fewer opportunities to scramble on the run to try and make something happen, which Lauletta, whether he's taking a snap or not, is more capable of doing than Eli Manning right now. The longer you let that fester, the worse off this is going to be, to the point where Lauletta gets in there, and it's not going to matter because his teammates are checked out. I think you inject some life into the offense by playing Lauletta against a Falcons team who, let's face it, they're without some of their best players on defense due to injury. Atlanta is not necessarily a hostile environment. There are a lot of New York transplants down there who might be taking in the game. And we saw Eli Manning get booed off the field. So it's not like there's this groundswell within the fan base that's as large as it used to be that wants to see Eli Manning continue.
That's true. The groundswell is definitely less. I think even the former players are probably less at this point. The ones who were going to protest, I think they're probably less. I think you wrote it, Matt, and it was so look, Kyle Lauletta is not going to be Carson Wentz. None of us expect that. Carson Wentz was picked second in the draft for a reason. Yes, they both played at like FCS schools, but that's where the comparison ends. So I think you wrote it. That first touchdown that Wentz threw, where it was kind of a broken play. He rolled out to his right, and then he threw across the body. That's today's NFL, man. That's Pat Mahomes. Yep. Obviously Brady can still sit in the pocket and fire it, and Breeze can still sit in the pocket and fire it, but Rodgers does that. Wentz does that. Mahomes does that. Roethlisberger does that. Roethlisberger is older than Eli Manning.
Yep.
Yeah, Russell Wilson. Yeah, that's today's NFL is scramble, buy yourself a few extra seconds and let your receivers run a scramble drill. Wentz did it again on a big play to Jeffrey later in the game where he rolled out, kind of pump fake, got Curtis Riley and Eli Apple in a miscommunication, hit Jeffrey. It should have been a touchdown, but wasn't a great throw. I mean, that's it. That's today's NFL is your quarterback has to buy you an extra second or half second or whatever, and the Giants aren't buying any. The Giants are returning half seconds. How's that for a shot right analogy?
I like that. But here's the thing. We know that Eli Manning can't do that. I think that even the most ardent Eli supporters would agree with that. That Eli cannot make those plays. We don't know that Kyle Lauletta can't. And I'm not setting the expectation.
I don't know if he can make the play. I think he can buy the time. I don't know. The question
is half the battle.
Can he make the throw after he buys the time? I don't know if he can. I probably don't think he can, but I know he can buy the time.
Yep, and that's where I think that it's time that the Giants find out. And I think that he could be a short-term spark to see what you have. And again, the Giants, this is going to be another pivotal offseason because if you look at the schedule, I don't know where the wins are coming. You still have to play the Eagles again. The Cowboys are coming here the last week of the season. Who knows what that game means at that point for that team in the NFC East race. Washington looked terrible against the Saints, but you still have to play them twice. And I think that they certainly have a better quarterback in Alex Smith right now than the Giants are getting out of Eli Manning. You still have to play the Tennessee Titans. You still have to play Andrew Luck and the Colts late in the year. I mean, it's going to be a struggle to find victories for this team. So you need to figure out what you have in Lauletta and if you can afford to move forward with a Ryan Tannehill, Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum type of quarterback, or if you're going to have to invest, which I think you probably should, in that top tier potential franchise quarterback, some of the names that we mentioned earlier. But you have to find out.
Matt, trivia question for you. How many games over 500 is Eli Manning in his career? 2-time Super Bowl MVP, possible future Hall of Famer. How many games over 500 is Eli Manning?
I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the area of 5.
4. Nice job, buddy.
Oh, how about that?
So that means if the Giants go 1-9, right?
Yeah.
They're 1-5. Yeah. 1-9, he'll be a 500 quarterback.
For his career with 2 Super Bowl rings. And again, I'm not here to destroy Eli Manning's legacy, right? I mean, he had
a great career. You just have to know when it's over. That saying he's done now is not saying, wow, in 2007 he got really lucky. No, he was good then. He was really, really good then.
He beat Brady and Hoodie twice in a Super Bowl. So to me, that to me is the top bullet point on a Hall of Fame resume that will be debated in 5, 6, 8, 10 years from now. I'm just looking at the here and now.
Terrible. Peyton Manning was terrible when he won his second Super Bowl ring.
Yep.
He was terrible.
He was a backup at that point.
He got benched for Brock Osweiler.
Yes.
He was terrible. Or Trevor Siemian, or maybe it was, I don't know. He was terrible. And then he came back in and won a Super Bowl. That does not mean that Peyton Manning is not one of the 3 best quarterbacks ever to play the NFL. It just means in that moment of time, he was done. And this might be Eli's moment in time.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then you look at the rest of the Giants offense right now. They really struggled to move the football last night. And you look at just total yards. And we talked about Saquon Barkley, how dominant he was. 229 yards from scrimmage for Saquon Barkley. And the Giants offense as a group, I believe they managed 401 total, but that was garbage time in the fourth quarter. There was a point in that game, Ryan, where they had 297 yards and Barkley accounted for 202 of them. You just look at this offense, it's not working right now. You're not stretching the field. You're not getting, quote unquote, ahead of the sticks. You're shooting yourself in the foot with penalties. You're getting bad offensive line play. It's a mess. And again, I don't think that the status quo with this quarterback and this game plan is going to be able to help you dig your way out of it. As much as Odell Beckham wants to say, all it takes is working hard and digging yourself out of the hole every day a little bit.
No.
I don't think that that's good enough right now.
No. Listen, everybody works hard. I hate that. Like, oh, we just got to get back to work and work hard. Do you think the Falcons aren't like, you know what, we're not going to work hard. So if the Giants work hard, they're probably going to beat us. No, eventually it comes down to talent and execution. It's not everything is solved with hard work. I mean, it's just not that simple. So look, no one's happier right now to be listening to this podcast than the guys who play defense for the Giants. Because we have spent 20 minutes killing the offense, questioning Eli Manning, who has a better resume than anybody on the Giants defense. And the Giants defense played 3.5 good games to start this season. They were bad against Carolina. They were awful last night. The effort was questionable again.
I thought they were okay in the first half. I thought that they hung in the first half. They were put in some really bad spots with the Manning interception, and they committed a couple penalties deep down the field. But you look at the numbers, and it bears out that they were pretty terrible. Total yards for the Eagles, 379. They gave up 23 points. Net passing yards, 271 yards through the air. Jackrabbit, Janoris Jenkins, looked completely disinterested. Looks like he might not even show up after this long weekend before a Monday night game next week. And other than Olivier Vernon, you couldn't really generate a pass rush. I agree. By game's end, Ryan, it looked like they were just going through the motions and content just to get out of the rain and get out of MetLife Stadium.
Which stuns me because James Bettcher, I thought, was a future head coach. He seems like a fiery, I don't know, for hard A to be. He just seems like the kind of guy who isn't going to tolerate this stuff. So I'm dying to talk to Bettcher. We didn't get to talk to him last week because it was a short week leading up to the Eagles. I'm dying to talk to him because the James Bettcher I've seen at the podium, that performance last night must be eating him alive.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's another area where you don't really have the personnel to fix it. The cornerbacks are what they are. Eli Apple, Janoris Jenkins, you're not taking them out of the lineup. Olivier Vernon gave you a little bit of a boost. He had 2 quarterback hits. He had a sack. He generated a lot of pressure early on, but faded late in the game. I guess that's to be expected when you haven't played since August 26th and you're coming off a high ankle sprain. Kareem Martin only finished with 2 tackles, but he batted 2 passes out of Carson Wentz's hand early. Then he disappeared. This team, Ryan, isn't able to generate pressure on the quarterback. They're not able to stop the run. I mean, you look at, back in August, we all thought that the Giants would be one of the premier rushing defenses in the league. They're bottom third in the NFL or worse right now in stopping the run. When you can't stop the run, when you can't run the football consistently, you can't make plays on offense, and you're getting torched through the passing game, there's only one verdict here. You're a bad football team, and they're just not any good right now.
Yeah, they're 4-19 in their last 23 games. The Cleveland Browns are 3-19-1 in their last 23 games.
Yeah, it's a terrific stat. And I know Steve Politi, our friend and colleague and terrific columnist, pointed that out in his story this morning. I'll tell you this. I'd probably be inclined to take the Cleveland Browns' future with Myles Garrett and the cornerback they just took in this draft and Baker Mayfield over all of the talent in the future of the Giants right now. If you had to pick one franchise for the next 5 years, who are you signing up for? To be the head of the Cleveland Browns or the head of the Giants?
I'll take the Giants because I just think it's a more stable organization. There's a better history. It's a more desirable free agent landing spot. But I understand what you're saying. The talent on the Browns is better. Let's put it this way. The question you pose is which job would I take? I'll take the Giants over the Browns any day. But if you offered me a fantasy trade of I'll trade you my 53 players for your 53 players, the Browns have the better 53 players.
I agree. And you look at the Giants right now, you probably have the top 5 running back in the league.
The Browns have the better 53 players for the future. I don't know that they have the better 53 players now, but sure. They have a more promising 53.
I agree. And the Giants have arguably a top 5 running back in the league right now, a top 5 wide receiver in the league right now. Evan Ingram's probably a top 10 tight end when he's fully healthy. And on defense, Landon Collins is a Pro Bowler. Janoris Jenkins, while he had a terrible game against the Eagles, probably a top 15, top 20 cornerback in the league, if not better than that. Snacks. And they're 1-4. And Snack's probably top 10 at his position as well. But my thought is, with all of that talent, the franchise seems broken at this moment. Mm-hmm. Because when you have that much talent and you're 1-5, something is wrong. And I think that the Giants, this is going to be a stare-you-in-the-face, pivotal offseason, and I don't think that you can start that process of evaluating 2019 and beyond soon enough, because you're not coming back from 1-5. The NFC East might be won by an 8-8 team, but the Giants aren't going to get to 8-8 this year. It's just not going to happen.
No. Let's point out, you mentioned Steve Politi's column. It was excellent. Mike Francesa, the big New York sports talk personality, had the same point of view. We keep dumping on Eli Manning, and I said earlier the common factor was Eli Manning. They changed GMs, they changed O-lines, they changed coaches, receivers, blah, blah, blah. The other common denominator is ownership, and this falls at the feet of ownership too. I talked to Louis Riddick, who interviewed for the Giants GM job before Gettleman got it, and he said he didn't think that Mara had a yes man mentality, was looking for a yes man, somebody who would tell him you only if you didn't agree Eli Manning was the future, then you were out of the interview. He didn't feel that way, but it certainly seems that way. It certainly seems like John Mara was handed the gift of all gifts. Ben McAdoo benched Eli Manning and got fired. The Giants could have easily hung McAdoo out to dry and been like, look, he went rogue. This is what he wanted to do. We didn't, we're sorry about it, but what's done is done. So we're going to move on from Eli Manning and let Ben McAdoo, take all the heat for it. And Mara looked a gift horse in the mouth. And now he is going to have to say goodbye to Eli Manning when it could have been, Ben McAdoo takes the heat. Now John Mara is going to have to do it. And that's on him because he had the opportunity. He was given it. And now guys who are loyal to Manning, like Gettleman, who was here for 10 years before becoming the GM, now Gettleman and Mara are going to have to do it, and that's going to be a lot harder for them to swallow and for Eli to swallow.
Yep, but I think it's what has to be done, and I think that if there's one thing we know about Dave Gettleman and Pat Shurmur, they're not going to be beholden to the same mistakes of the previous regime when it comes to Manning. Time will bear that out, but I think at this point, it's only a matter of time before they turn the page. Ryan, any parting shots before we get out of the way here?
No, I think we've taken quite enough shots on this podcast.
Yes, we have. And we'll be back next week previewing the Monday night game against the Atlanta Falcons. Hope everybody enjoys the weekend. The sun is shining. Fall weather has arrived. Throw on a hoodie.
See, there's a bright side. There's a bright side to all this.
Yes, there really is. There's a pumpkin beer, college football Saturday. Prop your feet up. And check in next week. He's Ryan Dunleavy at RY Dunleavy on Twitter. I'm Matt Lombardo at Matt Lombardo NFL on Twitter. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.